No one has left the meeting.
No one has left. That's good. Perfect. So yeah, welcome to the Power Platform User Group Cologne. As like always, we are talking about different stuff of Power Platform. Your hosts are, as always, like Philip and Marvin, and you will find like all the different links to our community and YouTube. Like if you maybe missed a session or something, you can just like head over to YouTube and get like with this. Also, if you may be interested in like speaking or have some interesting topics or ideas, what we can like do or improve, just like fill out the Microsoft forms here that we just like added here, or just like get in contact with Philip or me on LinkedIn on the different cases. So also like look out to what is like happening within the next couple of weeks and months. Just like a couple of save the dates that you maybe could be interesting. Like Ben will be speaking at the Berlin Power BI user group about some visualizations. Then Peter Hefner will like be at the Microsoft Cloud and Office 365 Rhine-Main user group to talk about some ticket systems. And then we will have Robin at the Power Platform User Group Cologne to talk about some printing and how to create PDFs from the Power Platform. Some Power Apps talk with Simon Kutzner at the Rhine-Main. Then Adrian and me will be talking about Power Platform governance. And in the later year, like in the second half of the year, there will be a DAX workshop with Torsten. And you will find like also a couple of other interesting topics every Wednesday and every Friday at the Power Platform User Group Stuttgart and Hannover with different guest speakers or with like Tommy, Stuff, and Stefan. Also, we have like a couple of conferences starting right now. There's the Power BI Summit in New Zealand. Also, there's in London currently the data conference SQL Bits, and both are like virtual or online in person. Then in a couple of days, there will start the Power Platform 24 conference as a virtual conference. Also, the Dynamics Con will start with a lot of different topics about Power Platform and other stuff. Also, in the end of March, there's the Teams Nation conference, not only about Microsoft 365, but also about Power Platform topics with a lot of interesting speakers. And in April, we will have the Microsoft 365 conference in person in Las Vegas and the European Power Platform conference in Berlin. Also, in June, there will be in Glasgow the Microsoft Collaboration Commit event in the Scottish Summit. And then we will have like today our session. Matthew, thanks for being here.
Hey, Marvin, thanks for inviting me.
Before you start, just like one more slide. So we are also like normally inviting our speakers and like maybe presenting a little gift to them because it is like all virtual currently and like not in person. We just like planted a tree for you in Germany.
Cool.
So to like reduce a little bit of carbon emissions, like that also this meeting is producing and everything, we are just like giving this a little gift to you. I will just like send to you afterwards the this little gift, and you can like hopefully not printing it out to save some more trees, but maybe save it somewhere very close to you.
Well, that's awesome, Marvin. Thank you so much. I really hope to come down to, Germany someday and visit my tree because I can see that there are some coordinates there.
Yes, there are.
Latitude, longitude. So that is so cool. That's awesome. Great.
Okay. Handing over to you.
Awesome. So I'm going to start off with a few slides here, but don't worry, the presentation isn't going to be all slides today. It's going to be mostly demo and talking with you, the audience. But I figured just to start us off, let's just bump into a quick PowerPoint right here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and ask that question we all ask. Do you see my screen? Can you hear my lovely voice?
Yes.
Sure can. Yes, all perfect.
Awesome. And it's looking good? Perfect. So I think it's about 10 past the hour here, and I think that we're going to be doing this presentation for about the next, 45 or 50 minutes. If you do have a question while I'm speaking, would love the help of my hosts, Philip and Marvin and the rest of the gang. If you could please call out anything that's going on in the chat so I could respond to it, that'd be absolutely amazing. So, what are we talking about today? We're talking about this problem. Have you ever opened up a Canvas app and seen this lovely little message before? Your Canvas app name is locked for editing by some guy who's in it, and by the way, you don't want them to be in it, and you can't use it. I know I have. I work in tandem with many developers, like on the same Canvas app, and what we're doing right now is we have to copy our Canvas apps and consolidate them later to be able to do multiple person development at the same time, or else we get lovely little messages like this. But what if there was a way that we could all work in the same Canvas apps together, much in the same way that we work in Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint and pretty much every other Microsoft application other than Power Apps and Canvas apps? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, I'm here to tell you today that this is now possible. It's an experimental feature, but it's now possible. What you're seeing on the left-hand side of your screen here is a developer working in their section of the app, and they're making some change. They press a little button at the top that says, "Hey, I've saved some changes, and please go ahead and commit them." And on the right-hand side, you're seeing another developer work at the same time, and he says, "Oh, well, my colleague did something. Why don't I press that sync button and update?" And then you can see the changes push through. These guys are both in the same Canvas app at the same time. Absolutely amazing. This is something I've been waiting for such a long time. I'm so excited, and I'm so excited to share with you like how it works and the best ways to use it. So, by the way, Marvin and Philip, were you guys aware of this feature before I came down to the presentation today, or is this completely out of the blue?
Like when it was introduced, like I immediately needed to try it out. So I actually like came across this a while ago.
That's
but
awesome.
I'm like happy to see like what you maybe figured out on your own.
That's great. That means I'm gonna have a great partner to talk with about all this fun stuff. Before we get too far into it, quick introduction to me. My name is Matthew Devaney, of course, and I live in Winnipeg, Canada, so Canadian citizen. I have worked with Hitachi Solutions, which you can see plastered all over this presentation, because I'm in fact using a work presentation right now, which I'm sharing with you, for the past year and a half as a Power Apps developer, right? Canvas app, model-driven, Power Automate as well, and all sorts of fun things. Before that, I was previously an accountant for 10 years. So I'm living proof that if you want to get into the technology game, there are many roads in there to make the transition. In my spare time for my hobbies, when I'm not doing tech, I like to go hiking and exploring outdoors, do orienteering, whether it's in the forest or in the mountains. And I do also like to pick up a guitar and strum it every once in a while. By the way, you can also find me at my Twitter handle at MattBDevaney, where I'm always sharing all sorts of fun tips about Power Apps and Power Automate, sharing the news. And some folks here might know that I tend to write a blog article every once in a while. Whenever I go to a user group, I like to just take a look at where I am and where you are. And today, this is probably the furthest I've ever spoken away from my home. In fact, Google Maps tells me that there's no direct route. I cannot drive to Germany. Believe it or not. That blue thing right there in the middle is ocean. But I live smack dab in the middle of Canada in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And I have never had the pleasure of visiting Germany, but actually it's like number one. If I cross the ocean, that's the place that I want to go. I want to come to Germany. Anybody here been to Canada, by the way? Going once, going twice. It's a wonderful country. It's a big country. It's very cold. It's minus 20 degrees Celsius right here now, which is pretty average for March. But yeah, come check us out if you have a chance. So right before we get into the demo here, let's just talk about what we're going to do today. So in my session, we're going to check out how multiple Power Apps developers can edit a Canvas app simultaneously, right? That was in the title. No surprises there. But in order to do that, we're going to have to create something called a Git repository. Okay? A Git repository is a fancy name for a folder where you can perform some source control, right? Source control is also known as change tracking. So we're going to put this Canvas app inside of a Git repository in order to have the sync between multiple developers. Once we get it in there, something really cool happens because we can actually see the source code behind these Power Apps. Now, some folks might already know that there are ways to unpack a Canvas app, edit the code, and pack it back up and bring it back into Power Apps. But here we can actually do live edits on the Power Apps, just like as if we were, pro developers. I just kind of think I'm a average maker, right? But that's really, really cool. So I'm going to really enjoy showing you that as well. And then because we're all working under this new way of doing things with, sharing the Canvas app with many people working on the same time, we have to come up with strategies for how are we actually going to do that? Because, by the way, if two people make a change at the same time, well, the question is, which one wins? And should we even be doing that in the first place? So I'm going to talk about some strategies and some limitations, some benefits, some gotchas, all gleaned from my real world experience here. And by the way, I'd love to hear from everyone in the room too, like what your experience has been with this feature so far as well, like if you've had the chance to figure it out and go through it. So before I start on the demo, any questions about what we're doing today? I'm really excited just to dive in. Okay, let's get rid of this this PowerPoint presentation. Nobody likes PowerPoint anyways. Good. And now I'm going to open up a tab in Google Chrome, and I'm going to share that instead. Okay. Everybody see my screen here?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so the first step is to go to make.powerapps.com and actually make a Canvas app, right? How can we test this simultaneous development thing if we don't actually have an app to test it on? So I'm going to go ahead and start up a blank app. And what should we call this app? I think I'll call it Power Platform UG Germany. That way I'll know which one to reference. So I'm going to create a new tablet app. And this is not going to be very sophisticated, by the way. It's just going to be maybe a title bar and some text. Something to work on here. So I'll call this screen the home screen. And maybe I'll zoom in a little bit so everybody can see the text on this screen a little bit better. Going to create a new screen from a template. Going to delete some things I don't need. I'm going to call this, once again, Power Platform UG Germany. Because I just can't help it, I'm going to go ahead and name some of these controls inside of the app. I'm a little bit type A in that respect. And now I'd like to put something else inside the app, maybe like a little bit of text. Marvin, when you're looking for some fake text, where do you usually go to grab for your...
I guess like maybe the most common is like lorem ipsum in Germany. So
I agree. I can't understand, a thing that lorem ipsum is saying, but it does seem to work nicely.
It's actually saying nothing. It's not real text. It just looks like a text and uses letters. It's not real Latin or so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
You learned something here.
Yeah, a little give and take, right?
Right.
I did know that it looked pretty Latin, but other than that, I did not know it.
It's just random letters put together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as I know it, it's really just for the purpose of doing things like making fake apps and fake magazine layouts and many fun things, right?
Yep.
So there you go, lorem ipsum, if you haven't been acquainted yet. Okay, I'll just give this a little bit of top padding and good to go. Hey, one more thing, by the way. If you've ever tried to, I don't know if many people know this is possible, but you can actually do custom fonts inside of Power Apps. So you see here, I have a list of maybe 13 to 16 different fonts, but you can actually use fonts that are not inside of the list. I can just go up here and type in the font as Roboto. That's another font I like to use. And you can see like the font shifts to something like completely different right there. So you could even type in, what's another popular one? Helvetica. Probably heard of that one before, right? And so you could actually use, Helvetica if you wanted instead. But another nifty little fun thing. There's about 170 different hidden fonts and Power Apps, and you can actually, use them as long as they're included on your device. Okay. So I'll go ahead and go to the home screen. I will call this label body. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and save and publish this Canvas app. Very important. Before you set up the multiple developer setting, you have to save the app, and otherwise it won't be able to work out. So perfect. Okay, so now we have an app. How do we make it so multiple developers can work on it? As I mentioned before, this is an experimental feature. So we know we need to go into our file and settings. Then we will go into the upcoming features where all the new features are hidden. Then I'll go to the experimental tab, and I'm looking for the one that's called Show the Git Version Control Setting. That doesn't sound like what we want at all, right? They probably could have named that something a little bit more friendly. But this is the option that you need to turn on to allow multiple developers to simultaneously work on the app. And did you see what happened when I did that? There is another option that came up right here on my menu, Git Version Control. The next step we're going to do is we're going to connect to a Git repository, okay? You can find Git repositories in places like Azure DevOps. You can find it in places like GitHub. A Git repository is a fancy name for a folder that can do source control. So we're going to place this app into our special folder, a special folder that can track all of the changes that have been made, whether by developer 1 and developer 2. And then when we resync the app, it's going to get that information from the repository, bring it into Power Apps, and now both developers are working on the same thing. Marvin, have you had a chance to, what do you prefer, by the way? Like, do you work with GitHub? Do you work with Azure DevOps? What is your kind of preferred way of going about this?
Like I've tested it with GitHub, and like on my personal side, I usually work with GitHub.
Yeah.
And on the company side, we usually work with DevOps. So it's like a mix of both things, but from the personal side, it's like always like more GitHub.
I think that's pretty common too, right? Our clients and our customers as consultants expect Azure DevOps because they want to do other things like project planning and pipelines and all that other fun stuff. So there's a repository right there. Why not use it? But I agree, for personal stuff, it's GitHub. By the way, if you're in the audience there and you have access to the chat, would love to see whether you've used either GitHub or Azure DevOps. So for the purpose of today's presentation, we are going to do GitHub. But I do have a link to an article that also shows you how to do it to Azure DevOps. So we'll just focus today on the, what does the feature do, right? I'm going to go ahead and connect to a Git repository. And now Power Apps asks me for what is the URL? So where does that repository exist? What is the branch? So there could be multiple development branches in a Git folder. And then what is the directory name? Like, what is the name of the folder inside of that Git repository? So in order to do that, we actually need to create a repository. So why don't we go to GitHub and do that? So I will go to github.com/Matthew Devaney. And now you know where my secret GitHub account is. And you can see I've not been very active in the last year. But we are going to go and create a new repository. By the way, if you haven't used GitHub before, like this is all completely free. So go ahead, sign up for a free account. You can do exactly what I'm doing and follow along with the video recording afterwards. So let's do new repository. We have to give this a repository name. So why don't we name this Power Platform UG Germany. We must give it a description. So we'll say a demo of the multiple developers feature. And then we are going to make this repository private. So as far as I know, this feature will only work with private repositories. And that's probably a good thing, because most of the times when we're developing Power Apps in tandem with someone else, it's for a company or for our clients. So by making the repository private, you can ensure only people that you've invited to it have access. If it's public, the whole world can see it. And sorry, but your secrets are out of luck. Everybody will know them. Okay, I'm going to click the green button. It says create a repository. And this tells me a few things. So I want to copy this URL right here, because this is where the new repository that I created lives. So I'll do a copy paste. I will paste it into the field right here. We need to say which branch are we going to start developing on, and you'll always use the word main. Main is the default branch, and then we can give a directory name. I like to use a folder called app, and you're going to see what the result of this is in a moment. It's just not obvious when we're typing into the screen. So I'll click apply. The next thing I have to do is put in a username and password. This is a private repository. It makes sense that we need to have a username and a password. So I'm going to go and type in my GitHub username, which is Matthew Devaney. But when I get down to this password field here, it doesn't actually want your GitHub password. It wants something called a personal access token. A personal access token is a special type of password that can be shared with many people to access some shared resource. It's usually like super duper long. It's always automatically generated, and it's just a jumble of letters and numbers. So I'm going to show you how to make a personal access token next. Let's go back to GitHub. I'm going to click on my personal avatar in the top right-hand corner, and then I'll go into settings. The next thing I want to do is scroll all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to click on developer settings. So here you can see a couple of options. I'm going to do personal access tokens. I already have a few personal access tokens, but I'm going to generate a new one here. You could see I was preparing for this presentation, presentation prep. Oh, looks like I need my password. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to create this new special type of shared password, which is called a personal access token. We need to give it a description. So once again, this is for Power Platform UG Germany demo. We are going to set the expiration date to 90 days. I believe you can go as far as 2 years, though. I like to set it to whatever the maximum is, because then I don't have to keep on resharing passwords with the folks I'm working with. And then I'm going to check this box right here, which gives me security access to make any changes I want to the repo, the repository, the special folder that we do source control in instead of GitHub. Nothing else is needed here. We can scroll to the bottom and generate a new token. And here it is. This is our special token. Now, one thing you need to know about these personal access tokens is you only get access to them once. Have you ever lost a personal access token before, Marvin?
Usually, like, I save them like in some password manager afterwards immediately when I need it, but I guess like or you need to like recreate them afterwards. So especially like with enterprise apps or something in Azure AD, when you maybe like miss to copy them at first or something, you just like need to create them afterwards.
But if you lose it, sometimes it can be a big pain, right? So I agree.
Yeah.
What you want to do is you probably want to put this in your favorite password manager somewhere. You could even put it in Azure Key Vault if you're very fancy. If it's low risk, I guess you could store it in a notepad on your desktop. But please, like, put it somewhere at least until we're done setting this thing up, because we're going to need it multiple times. Actually, it'll probably be in the Teams message that you send to your colleagues, so you could probably just search for it that way. Awesome. So we've got our personal access token. We've copied it down. I've copied it off my screen because we won't be able to see it again. Now we're going back to Power Apps. We cut and paste it in. Fingers crossed, this is the moment of truth. Okay, perfect. This is what we're expecting. It says, that branch was not found in the repository. Would you like to create a new one? And that makes sense because we have not used our repository before. So we click yes. And for some reason, it asks a second time. And we will click yes. And I believe that could be a flaw in this particular experimental feature, because why would it ask you twice to do a thing, right? Makes no sense. Okay, so it's completely set up now. We are using the main branch and the directory name is app. Let's go ahead and publish those changes to GitHub. So 2 ways to do that. You can first of all click this little commit button that's brand new up in the top right-hand corner. Or the second way that you can do it is you can just go ahead and do a normal save of your app. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this just by a normal save of my app first. And the reason that I like committing changes to a GitHub using a normal save is you have the ability to write version notes. Like, what's the point of source control if we don't have notes beside everything that we do? So I will say that this is the first, I'll say I added a title bar and some text. And I'll click save. So when we go back to GitHub, Annie, and we look at repositories, I appear to have 44. Now, we're not seeing anything here on the master branch, so that's interesting. So I suppose when this was set up, it still thought, hey, we want to have the master branch be the main one. But by the way, we created a branch called main. This is where our app is living. So that's kind of interesting that it got set up in that way, because GitHub was telling me something different. But I'm not going to waste like too much time here. I think that the takeaway here is that you should either use master as your branch in the main step, or what you can do is you can do a couple steps to transfer it over to be the new default branch. If we have some more time, I'll get right back to that. But let's go ahead and open up this app folder. And we see a couple more folders. The SRC folder is where the source code is for our app, the most valuable stuff. Hey, we can see that there's a YAML file for the app, right? That's the app object in Power Apps right over here, all the code for that. And we also have one for our home screen, as well as one for themes. So let's take a look. And there you go. So now we have a wonderful set of source code. Perfect. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get a second developer into this app in Power Apps and make sure we can both do development side by side. Okay, I'm going to hit close and publish. One tricky thing that I've found is when you're doing the simultaneous developer feature for the first time, you probably want to close and reopen this app because it'll still give you the locked sign otherwise. And it's kind of a fake message because we've already set it up. Okay, so anytime that you log into your Power App now, you're also going to need to log into the repository. This is just for people who are creating the apps, just the editors. This is not something that an end user would have to do. So I'm going to go ahead and click username and password. it's getting things ready, and that's perfect. So here I am. I'm developer 1. Let us get developer number 2 going. So I'm going to share a little bit more on my screen. Go. Da-da. Da-da. Can you see both of my screens now?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Okay. So here is the moment of truth. Here is what we paid for in this presentation. So, by the way, I'm going to log in as somebody else. I've made up a fake programmer called Mary Baker. So she's going to log in. But you know what? We probably have to share this new app with her for her to be able to see it. So why don't we just do that at the same time? Okay. So we have this app here. We have share. We want to share it with Mary Baker, who is our other developer. We want to give her co-owner access. Co-owner means that she can edit the app and share it, but not delete it or change the owner. She could also use it if she wanted to. And here we are updating the permissions. So I'm going to sign in as a guest over here. Ba-ba. Make. That's an interesting Google search. I don't even want to know what that brings up. Okay, make.powerapps.com. Sign is Mary Baker at MatthewDevaney.com. We'll put in her password. Yes, we'd like her to stay signed in, at least until we're done here. And yeah, here we go. So she can see Power Platform, UG Germany. We're going to attempt to edit the app as her. Here we go. So I believe her name is M. Baker, and this is her personal access token. We'll click sign in. And there we go. Mary Baker can start to use the same Power App as I can. We have 2 of these apps on the side by side. So as me, Matthew Devaney, I'm just going to go do something very, very simple. I'm going to change the background of that purple, and maybe I'll make the text a little bit bigger here. Maybe I decided it's too small, so I'm going to leave a little version note here. It says changed the title color and text size. And when I click save there, I could have also clicked this commit changes and check Git. But for Mary Baker, fingers crossed. Hooray! We did the magic trick. Amazing. So I don't know who's excited here, but I think that this is like absolutely amazing, right? Like, how many years have we been waiting for this, Marvin? My gosh.
I guess like I already requested this in 2016 back then.
Oh man, you're like the original Power Apps developer, are you not?
I guess not, but it's been for years that this feature is on the list to actually be possible, and I'm really happy that this is right now possible, at least in this kind of way. And what's kind of distracting, well, kind of making issues when you're working on something, and maybe Mary would also work on the same title, so she also changes the updates that the last one is just making the change, and that can maybe also make some issues within your app and everything. So that's something to work on, and reminds me a little bit of the first versions of Word when they had this synchronizing with
Oh my gosh, yeah.
all of that. But it's a good start, I guess. Yeah.
At least Power Apps is natively online, right? Like Microsoft Word, not so much. Well, didn't start that way.
Yeah,
At
it's
least.
true.
There's a question from Eva.
Yeah.
About is this the same access token for Matthew and Mary?
Yep. Yeah, so it's the same access token for Matthew and Mary, and that access token will give you access to anything inside of the repository. Okay, so you could go a couple of different ways here. You could start to put, multiple Power Apps in the same repository, and then share it out, and that way you could all access it under the same access token. To me, that seems a little bit, it could potentially get a little bit messy, right? As your number of apps expand and grow. The other way that you could do it is you could have a new repository for each app, more personal access tokens to remember, but ultimately like more security because you don't have to share it with, everybody as you would if you're putting them all in the same repo. So in my personal experience, like I like to just create new repos and have multiple access tokens. It's something I think maybe Microsoft needs to get a little bit better on and a little bit more convenient in some way. But let's also keep in mind it's an experimental feature and it's not even fully done until maybe June of this year. So, yeah.
Okay, it's better to share the access token via team channel.
I have another question.
Yeah, Rainer.
I've been using that, well, for basically trial purposes with a colleague of mine. And it's working really well. So especially since you can get access to the source code, as you said, let's say via Visual Studio, if you need to exchange variable names throughout the entire app or so, that's very easy. One thing we weren't quite sure about, you have a version control system in Power Apps itself, so you can go back to former versions. Does that conflict with the version that you then have saved in the GitHub? So will the GitHub replace the version? If you go back, let's say you have a Power App, you saved a lot of rubbish, then you go back to a former version, to previous version in Power Apps and open the app again. Will then GitHub replace that version again with the latest that it has on the GitHub?
Not in an automated fashion. You would still have to go ahead and commit those changes inside of GitHub.
All right.
I mean, inside Power Apps. So you remember that like little commit reload button? You'd still have to go ahead and do that. So it's not automatic. For the folks listening in too, like the version control in Power Apps, like is all the descriptions you write on. They are 1-for-1 versus GitHub. It's a little bit more messy, but they do have it. I feel like I should show that feature too. Why don't we go back to GitHub for a moment?
Yeah.
Let me put. It's like, where did GitHub go? There's so many tabs open now. I don't know where my screen has went.
Where did GitHub
there we go. Okay, so we have made a few changes, and by the way, we made our last change 5 minutes ago. And we're in that same folder I was looking at with the app on the home screen. Why don't we just go to the home screen right here? There's this little button here. It says history, a little clock with a round arrow. So if you go over here, you can see that I have a couple messages, changed the title color and text, and commit, right? Those were the first two that I did. But by the way, if we go back to make.powerapps.com, and we take a look at the version details, you can also see like I have a similar thing. Now, kind of interesting to me.
It doesn't have a version of it, yeah.
What happened there? Yeah. So I feel like that's another thing that I should probably report to the Power Apps team.
Yeah.
Because I swear I was seeing that before when I first investigated this feature, right? But again, it's experimental, and that's why you have to test these features out before they go into preview and ultimately general availability. You need to know what the blind spots are. Yeah. Yeah, have a few more things to show, but before we move on, are there any other initial questions about the setup here? Because I want to show something like I think is really super duper cool next. Because next thing I want to get into is like how can we actually live edit our code as a quote unquote professional developer in GitHub and see those changes manifest in the app itself. I think that's a feature that lots of people coming over from the quote unquote pro code world like really wanted. Now it's possible. Like I used to work on web pages, as a hobby early on, and I really loved how you could type something and see it right away. It's kind of possible now with this feature. So why don't we go ahead and check that out? Marvin, are you familiar with this new feature in GitHub? I think it's called, is it called Code Spaces? Is that what it's called?
Isn't it like just that you have like your virtual space for like writing some code in GitHub or something?
Yeah, it's here. I'll show you it. It's super cool. Okay, so we're gonna need a couple tabs here. I'm gonna close this one. Closed. Gonna leave that one. I'm sorry. There's just so many things open, and we need some space to work with here. Okay, so GitHub is going over here, and I hope that my screen is, not too small. So let's say that we wanted to actually work on the code behind the scenes for this Canvas app, and I'll minimize that. Let's go right to the start here. So we're in our repository on the main branch. We go to the app folder. We go to the SRC folder, which is where our source code is. And then we go to the home screen because that's what we wanted to edit. Did you know that if you press the period button on your keyboard, when you're in GitHub, it will bring up a full version of Visual Studio Code? Did you know this?
No, that is amazing.
Is anybody super surprised?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So when I was preparing for the first presentation I did in this at my company, Hitachi, I kind of discovered this, and I was probably the last person in the world to figure it out, but I thought this is amazing.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Because now we can browse our, what's in our repository here just by, clicking through a series of folders and YAMLs and files. It's so cool. So what I'm looking at right now is the code for this home screen. You might notice here's our lorem ipsum text. By the way, change your code into your code highlighter from YAML to C#, because Power Apps code is very close to C#. You're going to get a much better experience. But you can see, oh, here's the name of my controls, right? And here's the height and the width and the text, and just everything I would normally do over here by going to a specific property and filling it in. So why don't we do a quick test? What would happen if we wanted to change the fill bar here, like the title bar here, from purple to red? So I'm looking for the shape rectangle, which is called, no, I'm looking for the label, never mind. So I'll change RGBA to 255, and I'm hoping, there you go, it's not too small to see. I'll go 0, 0, and I'll change this from Power Platform UG Germany to, how about Canada? Let's just put Canada as another option here. Okay, so we've made our changes. We do need to commit them to Git. So you click on this little path, the source control button. You click on the plus button beside the screen that you want to update in your repo, your repository. Then you click the check button up top. You can see that we have some changes. Oh, we need a message. Of course we do. Title now red. Click check. I think it liked it. There's no more changes. And if we do it right here, fingers crossed again, risky part of the presentation. Is it going to work? Is it not? There we go. Power Platform, UG, Canada. Absolutely amazing. I love it. Now, wouldn't you agree that what I did is pretty trivial, Reiner?
Well, I don't think it is, because it's
no,
just,
you don't. Okay.
No. Well, I wouldn't say yes because I'd make you feel bad. So I think it makes you feel better when I say it. Psychology, you know.
Psychology, yeah.
No, it's quite amazing that I think what Marvin said before is that the Power Apps comes out of this kind of ridiculous editor environment is a massive move, and I hope that they continue doing that.
I agree. I 100% agree. And once again, I got to that screen by going to the file in my repo and clicking the period button on my keyboard. Yeah.
Gotta try that.
Now there's some like non-trivial, some very important things that you can do with VS Code that you can't do in the Power Apps editor. And one of those things is a massive find and replace. So have you ever run into, some naming regret? Let's say you named the collection call my favorite collection, but now you want it to be like Reiner's favorite collection. Maybe you had some naming regret. What you can do in Visual Studio Code is if we go back to our files here, we can do a quick, I'm looking for, there you go. It's not the same as the desktop version. You can go File, Edit, Find in Files or Replace in Files, and you can look up something common. Let's just say I'm looking up the number 160. It finds it in two places. I could type in, some other number, and I'm not going to click enter here, but I could click replace all, and it will change the variable name or property or whatever through all of the screens inside the app and not just one. And we can't do that inside Power Apps today. That's why I think this is a very important feature to use. Surprising, right?
Can you like also with that kind of thing, like change the theme all over the whole app?
I think that there's some possibilities there. It gets a little bit difficult, and here's why. You could write a formula to change the, let's say text, sorry, the font across the entire app if you want to. It'd be very simple because you would just type in, font, then something, and then assuming you've used some consistent text, you could change font Roboto to something else like font Helvetica. But wait, there's more. Let's say you had an inconsistent font on this screen, Roboto, on another screen, Arial, but you wanted to change them all to Helvetica. Well, you could write a regular expression to find all of those fonts and change them across the entire app. It's completely possible. Where it kind of falls down a bit is, well, if I just want to change them inside of this control, but not another control, like I don't just want to click that replace all button. I actually want to go and find, oh, what are all the unique instances where that occurred? And then I'll do the replaces like one by one. So still pretty fast, right? Just click that one and then that one, and the changes will be applied. But so I think to answer your question is, yeah, I think that would probably be a pretty big help. Not automatic, but still a big help.
Yeah, that's it. There's like another question in the chat.
Yeah.
So what happens if two developers are working on the same control at the same time?
That's a great question. Okay. So I had a couple more slides here that I was going to close the presentation with, but I feel that we can just kind of talk these things out, and it's probably the best way to go because who wants to look at more PowerPoint? What happens when Mary Baker changes the color of this title from red to blue, and then Matthew Devaney comes along and he does his own thing, changes it to something else. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm clicking on different things here. The last person to edit the thing wins. So if I do it last, I win. You're not going to get like an error or a conflict or anything like that. And Power Apps isn't going to even tell you that there's a merge problem. It's just going to make a smart merge. And by the way, you kind of have to live with that, unfortunately. I've heard that in the future, there might be some possibility to look at the merge, conflicts one by one. But the best way that you can approach this right now is to have a discussion with the other developer ahead of time. Who's going to be working on each section of the app? And really, isn't that a good idea anyways? If one person works on one screen and another person works on another, you're never going to bump into problem. If someone's just working on components and the other person's working on screens, that's great too. But the thing you got to be careful about is if you're changing things like variable names and purposes and that sort of thing, like it could potentially trip the other developer up. Once again, no different than the world before we could develop simultaneously. So the answer is last one wins, and just make sure that you talk with your, other developer to come up with, a strategy to both work on at the same time.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Any other questions coming as we get closer to the end of the hour here. Oh, yeah, nice to have you there. Next one says, after making all, you go ahead, yeah?
I have also a question. Is it possible to use the same repository in different tenants? So we are 2 or 3 developers with our own dev tenants. Do you have any experience with this?
I don't have any experience with it, but I also don't see why it could be a problem, because the personal access token that you're using in the repo like does not belong to any individual tenant. So I do not foresee a problem in that respect. Again, like I haven't done it, but I don't foresee the issue.
Okay. Thanks.
Was there another question coming through in chat there?
Yeah, I guess like there was one. After making all the changes on GitHub and commit, then want to move to prod, can you disable or remove the Git experimental feature?
Yeah, that's a really good question, isn't it? Because we probably, well, number one, we're not making changes in prod if we're doing this thing the right way. So currently there's no feature to disconnect the Power App from the GitHub repo. And like this is an issue. The only way I've been able to do it so far is to get rid of the repo itself. So not so good. Again, this is a reason why it's an experimental feature and not in preview yet. It's something that I've been asking the team to please implement. Like this is a showstopper, we need it. But I think that, yeah, it would not be, I don't want to say it's not possible to disconnect in another way, but that is an issue right now, and that is a great question. If someone else has had a different experience, please chime in. Like I'm not the expert of everything, so.
I think if you open the app, if you have it open and save it as another app, then the connection is automatically gone, isn't it? So just in case you absolutely need to disconnect it, I think that's the only way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that would work too. Unfortunately, like if you're bringing stuff to repo, production in like, solution or CI/CD pipeline, it would not write over that version of the app to give you the fresh one. Yeah. Yeah, so that was one of the limitations I had in my final slides there. And really, like what I would love to see here too is, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to do this for like every app individually? Like I would love if there was some more global way to do it. Like, why can't we just turn the light switch on and then it's on for every app? So to me, that would be kind of a killer feature. Again, it's early days. They say that the first version of the feature that they release is not going to be the final one. They'll keep working on it, but I think we could probably all agree that it's a very nice thing to have, and it's completely awesome. And with a little bit of work, it'll be production ready. All right. So I'm going to have to jump here, but I did put a link in the chat to a full set of instructions on how to do this for yourself. So go ahead, you can rewatch the video to set it up. I've got a version for GitHub and a version for Azure DevOps. So now, no matter what you use, there's a full set of instructions. It's got pictures and text and everything. And please, if you have any issues, just reach out to me on Twitter, okay? At mattbdevaney.com. And just want to say thank you so much for Philip for having me, and for Marvin for having me, and for the rest of the UG for having me here to speak. It's really awesome to be speaking to UG Germany.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Matt. Very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah.
I would like also stop the recording right now.
Yeah.
Matthew, can you